AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We were talking a bit last hour with Mark Leonard from wirepoints.org about the forthcoming 10 cities that BLM Brandon has described, but he hasn't exactly identified where they're going to go, how many will be set up, who gets the contract to erect them. That's big money.
Big, huge money. But he's asking every alderman to pick out a 2-acre site in their ward to be a possible host.
Whole of the city approach. I love it. It's wonderful. Everybody gets some. Nobody gets left out.
Yeah, and here's Andre Vasquez, Immigrant and Refugee Rights Committee Chairman. He has a new title.
And rapper.
I think what was made clear, and I think should be made clear to everybody, is that because of the scale of what we're looking at, every neighborhood has to share in the responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing is caring.
You're right. Alderman Moore says, sorry, not going to help out.
I'm a believer in help your people first, help yourselves first, help your community first, and then reach out and help others.
Sounds like somebody's not participating in the welcoming culture. Victor Davis Hanson, writing recently at amgreatness.com about what the left did to our country, many, many things. He writes this: immigration now is akin to the vast unchecked influences of the late Roman Empire across the Danube and Rhine that helped finish off a millennium-old civilization that had lost all confidence in its culture and thus had no need for borders. I wonder why he's making that observation. Perhaps he's sees a parallel on the horizon. For more on all of this, we're pleased to be joined by Mark Krikorian. He's the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies. And he's in studio with us because he's speaking at Notre Dame University this evening. I hope Father Jenkins isn't listening because that speech will probably be canceled if he is. Mark, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and we'll see what happens tonight.
Yeah. How are you treated on college campuses?
Well, sometimes ignored, and other times the usual, mobs of people, bullhorns screaming, that kind of thing. It kind of depends on how widely publicized the talk is.
Reasoned rejoinders from the left about how you're a hate monger and white supremacist, those sorts of things. You obviously have some idea what's happening in Chicago, like New York, like most urban centers around the country. Same policies, different names, but basically the same politicians. Obviously, Eric Adams, what he said this week about somehow migrants are going to ruin New York City, that's heresy. But we don't see any course correction despite all the protestation. We just see more demand from the cities for cash from the federal government.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the difference that Mayor Adams and, frankly, the mayors of lots of blue cities could make, is if they got together and said, okay, we don't hate foreigners, but holy moly, enough is enough. Mr. President, we're your, members of your party, we're insisting you've got to stop this catch and release stuff. It started on Inauguration Day. I mean, this isn't something that just happened to Joe Biden. He created this problem, and it's going to be harder to kind of fix it, to stop it, than it was to start it, but you can do it. And that is the only thing I think that might get the administration to change if all of these blue city mayors get together and say, this has got to stop. I'm not holding my breath, though.
But what if they declare that they're not sanctuary cities anymore, or sanctuary counties, or sanctuary states? Would that make a difference?
It might make a little difference, except that the people that Biden is letting go, they're giving them a piece of paper. Even though they're illegal aliens, they're, technically, at least for a period of time, legally here. And so I think ending sanctuary policies would make a big symbolic difference, a symbolic effect, but it's not like that would then allow ICE to swoop in and start getting rid of these folks, because ICE isn't allowed to do its job anyway. It's run by the Biden administration. That's the one letting all these people go.
Yeah, but in addition to the symbolic nature, at least you would have police in communication with ICE so that we're doing the best we can, even though we're handcuffed by the federal government, as opposed to we're doing the best we can, even though we're handcuffed by federal, state, and local government.
Right. No, I mean, look, I'm all for getting rid
Yeah,
of sanctuary
right,
policies. There's
right.
no excuse for them. But the whole point to sanctuary policies is that when ICE calls and says, hey, this guy you arrested for beating up his wife, popped up on our flagged on our system, please hold on to him. We want to come pick him up. And a sanctuary city basically flips in the bird and says, no, we're going to let the guy go. But if ICE isn't asking them to hold on to people, then in a sense, we sort of have a sanctuary country within which we have sanctuary cities, too.
And there's no plan in place so they go to their merit hearings, and if they don't earn asylum, there's nothing in place to take them back to the country where they came from.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. I mean, it's not as though they usher you to the hearing and then the judge says, sorry, you don't qualify. And then they say, okay, now we're going to take you to the plane. They send you a letter called a run letter. Basically, I mean, it's what they call it inside the agency, because it's like, okay, well, now you run. And now you don't even have to run because ICE won't track you down in any case. And that all assumes you even have a hearing. In New York, they're letting a lot of these people go, obviously, at the border and say, turn yourself into ICE when you get there. Literally, that's what they call it. Well, in New York, ICE has said they are backed up for appointments for people to turn themselves in and even start the process until 2033.
Right.
So it's that, in other words,
Right.
the idea of even getting to a hearing on the merits of a claim for asylum, assuming you even bother to apply, is something, even that is years in the future.
The other thing that's happening, too, this has been a bit underreported. I mean, certainly you're not talking about anything like the numbers at the southern border, but we've had an increase in people coming over the northern border, like more people coming over the northern border illegally this year than in the past decade combined.
Right. I mean, the numbers, like you said, are starting from a much lower level, but they've hugely increased because, Joe Biden has put out what in Spanish they call la invitación to the world, an invitation. In fact, that's the way the smugglers refer to it, an invitation to illegal immigration. And some people, if they can get into Canada or they have a connection there or they don't want to deal with the desert, it's safer, obviously, to walk across a maple forest into Vermont. I mean, I've been at the border up there, and the Canadians actually kind of have a good handle on it. They got cameras on trees and everything watching the border, but they don't care if people are leaving Canada and going into the United States.
Right. And of course, people are being checked for criminal background, for infectious disease. So it was a surprise to me, I mentioned a bit earlier, this from Chicago Krikorian. We've learned an ambulance was called to the 18th Police District yesterday in late afternoon to respond to 3 illegals aged 18, 21, and 47 who required medical attention for tuberculosis. So forget the COVID booster. Make sure you got your tuberculosis shots up to date here in Chicago.
Look, there are hundreds of thousands of people a month turning themselves in at the border, and Biden is letting them go. How much, can they do as far as vetting whether health-related or criminal background or whatever? I mean, yeah, they run their names through and see if they have a conviction or something in the United States, but it's not like you can call up the Tajikistan DMV and say you have anything on this guy, let alone.
Do you have that 800 number?
Yeah, exactly. I have it in on my phone. Let alone the kind of detailed medical stuff. I mean, they look at you. Obviously, if there's, Ebola coming out of your eyes, they do something about it. I mean, they do those kind of basic checks, but it's very cursory, and then they let them go.
And the kids that are enrolled at CPS, they don't have to have a vaccination of any,
really?
of
I
any
didn't know
kind.
that.
No,
Yeah. Well,
no
because
vaccinations required for anything.
illegal alien privilege is what it's called.
Well, the other thing,
Double standard.
the other thing too, in addition to Invitación, there's cash and prizes associated with that. I'm not just talking about winterized tents. We got a report from a friend's cop, called to a house at 60th and Princeton, 17 migrants squatting in a house, 5 cars in the driveway, all unclaimed impound cars given to them by the city. So now we have the city giving unclaimed impound cars to people here illegally so they can, get around.
They have driver's licenses? I mean, I guess maybe that doesn't count either.
We do.
Yeah.
Probably not insurance.
We
either.
do driver certs here, but we're not sticklers about it.
Right, yeah, obviously. But see, that's the thing. And even the 17 people in the house thing, most places have occupancy rules. Only so many unrelated people can live in a house. This happened in suburban Washington, where I live, where they just said, yeah, we don't enforce those laws if it's illegal immigrants that are the ones violating them.
Well, what do you take? I mean, is this the only city where migrants are sleeping at police stations? We have close to 800 airports, police. But this morning,
I didn't see them at O'Hare when I came in.
Well,
maybe
they're
I
behind a
didn't go-
black,
right.
black curtain. They're trying to, make sure that you don't see it. But reports this morning from CWB that the migrants are parking their cars in police officer spots
Oh my
at
gosh,
the districts.
unbelievable.
I mean, what are they going to take next from them?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. On the other hand, I mean, the police have their hands full, right? I mean, in Chicago anyway. So
Well, yeah. 10th District police were forced to move a memorial honoring Officer Ella French, who was killed
Wow.
in action, into the community room because they had to accommodate 130 illegals that are staying in the 10th District. So, I
See,
mean,
that
you know,
just makes me sick. to my stomach.
it's the there's no indignity we won't inflict upon ourselves. I mean, but that's the story of big blue city America.
it's open. In this case, it's open borders uber alles is the way I put it. I mean,
Yeah,
there's.
right.
I even wrote a piece years ago on this that every interest group on the left will sacrifice whatever their ostensible purpose or objective is if it conflicts with open borders. ACLU, there's a great story on this. There was a guy in New York, kind of a gadfly activist, and he put up this billboard that had two little kids and said, "Immigration will double America's population in our lifetime. Do you think that's a good idea?" on a website. Very innocuous thing. The city government of New York came to the owner of the billboard and said, "You're taking that down or we're coming down on you like a ton of bricks." Explicit political censorship. He went to the New York ACLU and they said, "Well, yeah, you're right. That is explicit political censorship. But, we got immigrant rights people here in our organization, so we're going to have to pass."
Yeah, I mean, don't want to
Oh
make
my
anybody feel uncomfortable. It's interesting. New York, this was like a blaring headline. 41% of New Yorkers surveyed want Biden to build a border wall. Well, that's New York State.
Right.
41%. That's a smaller percentage of the vote than Lee Zeldin got, the Republican candidate for governor. So that's not exactly like a revolt is happening because of the migrant invasion in New York. Well, not invasion. They were welcomed in. They were transported. They were welcome. So because of the migrant population that has descended on New York City, that's not exactly like overwhelming negative reaction. They still can't bring themselves, no matter what Eric Adams says, no matter what anybody says, no matter what they see, no matter what they experience, they can't bring themselves to be commonsensical about this.
Yeah, and this happens all over. I mean, you'll have scenes of people, communities really getting ticked off, whether it's in South Chicago here,
Yeah,
whether
right.
it's in Staten Island in New York. But ultimately, I think there's two things. One, it's hard for people to just, change their minds on stuff. But I also think part of it is Trump. And look, I voted for the guy twice, but the point is for a lot of people, they hate him so much, anything he says, they want the opposite. If he said you should take a shower every day, they'd stop bathing. And so
Right.
because immigration is so associated with him, I think there are a lot of people on the left that just can't bring themselves to saying, well, yeah, he's kind of right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're right, but I mean that's just such an idiotic
I don't
position
disagree.
to take because it's not about Trump. It's not even this predates Trump by 40 years, and it will post-date him by 40 years. It's like this is politicians come and go. It was Pete Wilson in the 90s in California. We were talking about this too. It's like, come on, just would you wake up and broaden your understanding of the world beyond what Trump says or does in any given moment? I mean, it's so sophomoric. These people are, I guess I don't know. They need to be, they need to be challenged. They need to be
Well, they need
flogged.
to be.
I don't
It's
know,
kind of like
something.
in the 60s, they used to say that a conservative was a liberal who got mugged.
Mugged by
And
reality.
Yeah,
Right.
you're kind of seeing some of that. It's just very slow and very hard. And I think part of the reason is the left, at least at the kind of elite level, the elected officials and opinion leaders, they have radicalized on immigration in such a way that they don't think the American people actually have the right to say no to anybody. And so they see immigration law kind of as like Jim Crow.
There's no difference between citizens and non-citizens. There should be
Right.
no difference.
Exactly.
No difference in rights and privileges.
And why would you enforce the border if that's the case?
Right, and so this is it too. I had this discussion with Victor Davis Hanson the other day. We all, just acknowledge what is true. We all treat 115 people dead in Maui through wildfires, by wildfires, or 1,000, 900 people, 1,000 people killed in the hurricane that hit New Orleans, Katrina. We treat it differently than 2,700 people killed in a earthquake in Morocco.
Sure.
They're all tragedies, and we want to help people in Morocco and relief agencies and send money and do all that. But we treat it differently. Why? Because we understand our first duty is to our fellow American. We just innately know that. And what they're trying to do is sort of, meld humanity to unlearn what is innate.
Yeah, but I mean, it's innate because obviously you take care of your family before you take care of the neighbors,
right,
et cetera.
Exactly.
The thing is that these guys are. It's not so much that they're that they're anti-American. I mean, some of them probably are, Jane Fonda types, but they're at best post-American. They've moved beyond that. America for them is kind of like, living in New Jersey instead of New York City or something. It's a place you live. You may even like it, but it's not like you actually have some kind of moral responsibility to the people who live there any different from you have to anybody else.
Right. To take that position is to be
exclusionary.
And also, and you're not cosmopolitan.
Right.
You're not a citizen of the world.
Exactly.
Mark. Right. The late Roman Empire lost all confidence in the culture, thus no need for borders.
It's totally different from the Roman Empire because they came from the northern border of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Now you're speaking at Notre Dame tonight. What's the topic? What's the
kind of
premise
what's
of your
going on
speech?
in immigration? Sort of generally, what's the kind of stuff we're talking about. What's going on?
And whether or not they can compete with the NIL money that Colorado's players are getting. Mark Krikorian, Executive Director, Center for Immigration Studies. Mark, thanks for joining us. Appreciate
Thank you.
Listen to Dan and Amy on your smartphone. Download the AM 560 mobile app today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Rick here from Forever Remodeling. You probably heard me talk about